Okay, in this episode I'm going to show you how, shooting into the sunset, we can get back the sky and also get back the shadow cast by the sun. And to do this, the first thing we're going to do is, first thing I always do is I always lens correct my image, only because that takes away the vignetting from the side and also takes out any barrel distortion or any distortion caused by the lens. Now, as you can see by this image, it's rather flat, and the actual horizon is slightly drunk, and there's not a lot of detail in the sky, and in fact you can just make out the silhouette of Reculver. So what we need to do is we need to recover this, and we also need to recover the sky, and we're going to do that right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to straighten this horizon, and the good thing about Lightroom is now it has this little handy little box down here that allows you to set levels, vertical levels, and also you can just press auto as I do here, and it will straighten that horizon for me and also do the levels to keep that straight. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do in this is we're going to drop the highlights down, and what this is going to do is it's going to get back the detail in the sky that the camera has actually captured but you can't see. So we drop that down minus 100%, and what you'll see is you can see all these clouds have appeared, and even some wispy white ones over here. And the next thing we're going to do is we need, at the same time, because this has obviously darkened the image but it's not affected the shadows, we need to get the detail that was cast by the sun back. And to do that, we're going to get our shadows, and I'm going to pull that up to 100% on this particular image because it is so dark. And now you can see the brickwork. If we zoom in, you can actually give that a chance to render. You can actually see the brickwork, and you can see the tops. Okay. Now you're looking at that and you think, well, that's pretty good, but what that does is by dropping your highlights and pushing up your shadows, this actually makes the image look remarkably flat. So to do that, and I recommend this in any image you do regardless of what you're doing, is you should set your white points and you should set your black points, because if you print an image and the reason why it looks flat, that is because your white points and your black points are not set correctly. So to do that, we're going to hold down the Alt key and we're going to hit our whites, and the screen will go black. And as soon as something appears, so around about 20%, if I can just get to about 20%, holding down the Shift key will then make that do it easily. 20%, that's set my white point over here. And now we need to set my black point, and this will give it a little bit more punch. And I'm going to drop this down, and I'm going to drop this down further because the black you see on the screen now is just cracks in the rock that holds no detail whatsoever. So I'm going to go down to about 50%, and I'm going to have it like that. So let's have a look at the original image. We've gone from there, we've gone from there, and if you remember, when I did before my white points and my black points, we were looking remarkably flat at there. So now we're here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give this image a little bit of clarity. So I'm going to give this about 25%, just to give it a little bit of a punch and a bit of crispiness. Overdoing this obviously will in turn make this into a HDR image, in Lightroom's little way of making HDR. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of vibrance, just to give that image just a little bit of a nice lift. And what vibrance does is it picks out colours and it tries to look at certain colours and make them. It's not the same as saturation, where saturation just punches up colours. What vibrance tries to do is it tries to look at colours and tries to lift the colour that's not as strong as the colour that is. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to punch my saturation up probably to about 15%, and that's giving this sky a nice little bit here. Okay, now we've got this fence here which I don't particularly like, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to crop my image down to that point there to lose that. And also I'm going to lift it up a little fraction and bring this in just so that we lose the tip of this rock here, which could be a distraction in the image. Okay, so now we've done that, the last distraction, there are two. There's one here and there's one here. The first one, this was a bag, so we're going to lose this carrier bag, and that's quite simple in Lightroom. We use a spot removal tool, and in Lightroom 5 the spot removal tool is no longer a spot tool. It can actually remove power lines and things like that. You can actually paint with it. So we're going to just paint that out, and it's going to find a point, but you might not like that point, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that over to here, and yeah, I like that a lot better. So, and then we can look at that, and if we go before and after, it's gone. Obviously one thing I would do is I would zip over into Photoshop, and I would probably not do this removal from here. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this little white point here, because it's a distraction to the eye, and any distraction in the eye, in my eyes, is a distraction completely. So I'm going to take that out to somewhere up here, just to remove that little corner distraction, and that makes that image a lot better. Last thing we're going to do is going to put a little bit of contrast into this image, maybe of about 15%, just to give it a little bit more of a kick. And I am actually going to up my exposure to round about, I'm going to try about 0.5, and that might be just a little bit too bright, so let's go down to 33, and yeah, I think that's quite good. And lastly, there's two things you can do with this, how you like your sunsets. You can, of course, punch up the temperature to give it that golden sunset if you really like golden sunsets. And if you're like me, you don't like a golden sunset, you like more of a nice red sky sunset, like so. I'm going to kick that to about 33%. Maybe that's a little bit too much. Let's drop that down to say 20%. There you go. And that's just giving it a little bit of a nice sunset look at the sky. So it's got this red tinge and it's reflected onto the rocks. Obviously there's a lot more you can do to this image, and I would usually spend a lot more time over it, but for now that is just the basics of editing.